Hey there, this is Stephanie. When PR and publicity coach Simone Sauter connected with me on LinkedIn, her message immediately got my attention as a possible answer to this question: how can I market my coaching business without social media? Since she specializes in working with life, health, and business coaches, she was the perfect source for my latest no social media unmarketing experiment. For weekly updates about my unmarketing experiment and how to attract your soulmate clients and change the world with joyful unmarketing, go to theawakenedbusiness.com/wild creation. Let me tell you just a little bit more about Simone. She is a PR and publicity coach, best-selling author, and tech nerd. She helps coaches to get more clients by getting free publicity so that they can rise above the noise online, skyrocket their income, and make a bigger impact. Simone has built her online coaching business in the relationship niche, specializing in breakup coaching solely with PR, and became Germany's #1 breakup coach in less than 2 years. Her website organically reached more than 1 million people within that time, and she created an advertising value of more than 3 million euros. She's been featured in Cosmopolitan, In Style, Closer, on podcasts, radio shows, and TV. Simone holds a university degree in journalism and public relations, is a certified PR consultant from German Press Academy Berlin, and is a certified NLP and hypnosis master practitioner. She's worked as a PR and social media manager for the world's biggest online dating website and brings 8 years of experience as a freelancer at the radio station to the table. You can get more information about Simone Sauter and her Publicity Rockstar program on her website at simonesauter.com, or you can connect with her on LinkedIn. So, Simone is chock full of information and tips when it comes to using PR and publicity to build your coaching business. This is fabulous information and well worth a listen. So I hope you enjoy. Without further ado, here is Simone. Simone, thank you so much for joining me here today. I'm really excited for this conversation. Feels like I've been waiting forever. It's probably only been 2 weeks, but
Thank you so much for having me.
yeah, so let me see, where do I want to start? So I was telling you that what I'm most interested in right now, both personally and also as a part of my no social media unmarketing experiment, is kind of like, how can we promote our coaching businesses? How can we reach the people that we really want to be drawing in, who we want to create and help and work with, without using social media? Because every time I've talked to a few even heart-centered marketing experts about this, and they kind of look at me like I'm crazy when I say that. Like, why would you do that? Why would you put yourself at this disadvantage? So I've been exploring alternative ways to connect with people online in particular, because I have a background in internet marketing and I've done a lot in the digital marketing space. So I'm like, I know it can be done and I've done it, but I want to kind of take that to the next level. So I found you. I think you connected with me on LinkedIn, and I looked at what you were doing and I said, oh, and you work with coaches. This is perfect. So I'd love to find out from your perspective a little bit about how we might be able to use PR and publicity and the kind of things that you do to connect with our clients as coaches and healers and wellness practitioners. So first of all, do you have clients who have motivation like that work with you? I'm just curious.
To skip social media?
Yeah.
I mean, with my strategy, I recommend to have one social media channel, but you don't have to have, right? It's just, all marketers say like you have to have social media. So, but the problem that I see a lot is that coaches in particular, they try to be on every social media channel, or, they are on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on Instagram, and, on Pinterest, and I don't know whatnot. And creating content for all these social media challenges is really exhausting, and most of them are overwhelmed. And social media is a great place, but still it is a very crowded place, and it doesn't really matter if you talk about organic traffic or paid traffic, right? Also, if you do Facebook ads, ads, they don't work as well as they used to work. They lost trust in the past years. And we are kind of immune to advertising, right? I mean, we can see it. And I mean, if you use ad blocker, you don't even see them. So for me, when I started my first business, so I started my first business in 2014 as a breakup and divorce coach. I didn't have the budget for advertising, and I do have the PR and publicity background. I have 18 years of experience. So this is why I thought, okay, I'm gonna do PR for my business, right? And it worked super well, and it was super successful. But one of the reasons was also that I mean, besides that, I didn't really have the budget to invest in advertising. I also didn't want to because it's so crowded. And that's basically how I see it. Like, social media is great, but it also leads us to massive overwhelm, especially as business owners, and also privately. I mean, if you look at how many hours we are on the phone on social media, it's horrible. But that's basically how I see it, and what I experience also with my clients.
Cool. So would you tell me, Simone, just because I want to make sure I understand this phrase, PR and publicity. I hear this talked about. I am not an expert in these things. I'm like, what does that actually mean? And like what, and I think you are working specifically with something even more specific than PR and publicity, right? You're working with coaches. And then tell me a little bit about that. What does it mean?
Well, you mean what PR and what publicity means?
Yeah.
Right. So PR basically means that you build relationships with people and networks around you, which is your audience, your journalists, multipliers, and you actually maintain the relationship through helping each other out, right? So you build the relationship, and publicity is one of the results of good PR, right? So you build a relationship with a journalist, you offer stories to them, and you become a valuable source, and that way they know that they can come back to you for content, and you will in exchange for giving them the content, you will get the publicity. Now, there are a couple of things that you can offer to a journalist, which is a story. It's the first thing. So a story needs to be emotional. It needs to evoke emotions. It needs to relate to your audience. It needs to be timely and memorable. The second thing that you can offer is your expertise as a coach in particular. So that means you offer information, you offer your knowledge. And most of the time, then you get on the phone with a journalist, and they will interview you, and they will quote you, and they will mention your name and probably your business if you know how to do that. And then they will create their content piece around that. And the third thing you can offer is a strong opinion. Now, a strong opinion is, for example, like if you have a mediocre opinion and you're like in the middle, that's not interesting for journalists. Right. Journalists want to talk to someone who polarizes, right? So, for example, with my heartache business or my divorce business, I often pitched why everybody should suffer from heartache at least once in their lifetime. So this is very controversial because no one wants to suffer from heartache, right? And this is a headline that you read twice. The same thing goes for my PR business, right? If you send out press releases, your PR really sucks, right? So this is why, like, oh, really? Because everybody thinks about sending press releases if they hear PR, and it's not what it is, right? It works when you're a household name or when you're a huge company, then it's fine, but it doesn't work for small business owners. But that's something that people read twice, and that also works well. So basically what I do with my coaches is I teach them how to become their own publicist. I teach them all the steps. So there are a couple of steps that you need to take. And we really start, with mindset. We start with what is your business story? What is storytelling? How do you tell a great story? How do you connect with your audience? And then there are a couple of steps that you need to follow, basically, to get into the media. And that's basically what I teach them.
So who do you think is the best match for using PR and publicity and the things that you teach, storytelling and learning how to pitch journalists and get featured? Who is the best match for it? Because I'm imagining that some people would be a better fit for this strategy than others.
Well, I do this for 18 years now, and PR is basically really something for every company. If you know how to do this, the trick is you need to find a great story, and you always the great story is not in your business, right? Your business is not the story. The great story is always in people. So if you are a huge company, then you should, talk about some very special employee or something that you achieved or something that you do, right, for the society or whatever. If you're a coach, then it's always about you as a person, because at the end of the day, you are the product. You sell yourself, and people need to connect with you, and people need to trust you. So there is a recent story from Edelman which shows that 81% of people said they need to trust a product or a company before they buy. Now that's for products, right? And that's for companies in general. Now imagine for coaches, this is much higher, because at the end of the day, they buy you as a person. And most of the time we work with our clients between 3 and 12 months. So they need to like you. They need to be able to connect with you. And they need to be able to see themselves in you. And this is something that you can achieve with PR, because with PR you tell stories, right? And you connect with people on a personal level, and you make yourself vulnerable, and you help people, right? If you share your story and you're vulnerable, you help people to see that they are not the only ones struggling with that. So my divorce coaching business came from my first relationship. So my ex left me after 10 years relationship, completely out of the blue. His new partner moved in within 4 weeks. I was devastated. I went through a breakup for 2 years, and I shared this, right? And so by me being vulnerable, I allowed other people to feel that it's okay, that I'm not the only person, right? And that also helped them to connect with me. And yeah, I mean, trust is super, super important, and you get this by being you.
Yeah. So what I'm wondering about this, because I had a friend who's a PR specialist, and she would promise, you'll develop relationships and networking, but she would stress that this is not an instant strategy. It's not like your leads are going to come pouring in right away. It's about a relationship over time, right? Like connection and trust with the journalists, with the media outlets, with the people who see your content. So what's important in a strategy? Like, okay, I get an article placed somewhere where my potential clients might be. How do I actually turn that into real clients for my business?
Well, that is the thing, that most of the people get it wrong, because most of the people don't follow the steps. They don't start with the basics. So you always need to start to do research about the media outlet you want to be featured in. Many people say, I want to be featured in Forbes. I want to be featured in Entrepreneur. And then they are a spiritual coach. And I'm like, well, that's, awesome, but you're not, your target group isn't necessarily there, right? So there are better media outlets for you. So the thing is, you need to do your research and find out if the media outlet has your audience. And when you have that, then you need to find a story that is interesting for the journalist, a story angle, and you need to be able to bridge it to your company, right? So if you talk about your company, that is not valuable for a journalist. Like, journalists are not interested in your company, in your products, or in your services. That's advertising. Journalists are always interested in the story behind. So your task is find a story that is really appealing for the journalist, and then bridge it to your business. And then especially for online PR, you often get this, like this little author box underneath, or when it's an interview, they introduce you as the person you are, and then they link out to a website. So, and depending on what media outlet it is, you can even link out to your freebie, like to your opt-in. You can also say schedule a call. It always depends a little bit on how open they are, because journalists are not allowed to do advertising. So this is a little bit of a gray zone. Sometimes you also have to be lucky, but the worst case is that they link out to your website. And then it's about, how is your website structured, right? Do people immediately see what you are about? And is your the biggest thing that you market, like for me, that's a consulting call, is this on top? Is this above the fold of your website, right? And if that is, then this is how you can bring in leads, how you can bring in people. So yes, PR is not to I mean, it is a strategy to get leads straight away, but it's not that you can scale it. It's not that you can calculate it. With advertising, it's you at a certain point, once you invested a fortune and found out what works for your business and what doesn't, you can say, I want to scale, and then you invest an amount of X in euros or dollars, and this amount of leads will get out at the end. This is not how it works with PR, right? PR is really about building relationships, building trust, building a reputation for your business. Also, if people know that not everybody can get in the media. People know that the media talks to experts. That is why it's a third-party endorsement that a lot of people underestimate, and you shouldn't, because it really pushes your reputation and it really pushes your credibility as a business owner. Because if people go to your website, you go to my website, for example, you see my name and you see what I stand for, and then there is immediately the media banner. So you can see immediately where I've been featured in. And people, even if they don't want it, they immediately will recognize me as an expert and perceive me as an expert in my field, because we subconsciously know spots in the media are very rare. And when you have been featured, then you must be someone who knows your stuff, right? So this is what subconsciously works in people. And this is also how it can, increase your sales. For example, if you have a sales page, you put the logos on there and you promote your interviews and your media coverage. So this is basically how it works. It's really more a long-term strategy. But also with online PR, if you get featured in a magazine, in an online magazine, it stays online, right? So it's not that it goes away. Like, for example, with advertising or a simple social media post, it goes away, right? People will see it and then it disappears. And for online PR, it's, they will find you on Google, especially for big websites, because they rank high on Google. So if you're, I don't know, I just say Forbes as an example, because, they rank high, it's a huge media outlet. And you talk about PR, right? And you have really a great interview, a great article, then people can find me, right? People can find me when they Google how to do your own PR. And this is how it just keeps on living online, doesn't go away. And that's also how you will constantly get in leads. And then you can imagine the more publicity you get, the more leads will come in. So it really builds up over time. And also, you will create something like a domino effect, a ripple effect. So from my experience, it's after the first 5 to 6 media pieces that you have, this will slowly start. So people will reach out to you, journalists will reach out to you because they monitor each other. And that way you get up in the spiral. You just become visible and visible and visible and even more visible. So that is basically how it works.
Cool. So if a coach wanted to find the right match of media outlets, because it sounds like that's actually one of the first things to do. So like, do your research. You're not just sending stuff out there all willy-nilly. It's like, how do I find out? Like, what kinds of questions, or where do I search? Like, how do I find out if my potential clients are actually there or not?
Well, I mean, consume the media outlet, right? First of all, to know this, you need to understand your ideal client. You need to understand the pains and desires of your ideal client. I mean, this is the basic stuff that you need to do when you run a business anyway. So if you don't know your ideal client, now you have to go back to a drawing board and define that person and see, okay, who is that person? And not only the demographics, but also sort of the psychographics, because this is what really defines your person, right? Like, what do they read? What are their hobbies? What are they thinking when they wake up at night? Why can't they fall asleep? Like, what is, going on in them? And then from there, you can see, okay, this is something that they will consume. And then you can consume this media outlet and see, okay, is this something for me? Where could I fit in? Who's the journalist that I should talk to? So that is basically how you should start.
Is there anything in particular, since you're specializing in doing this with coaches, that you think either is like a strength or a weakness in coaches with a PR and publicity strategy? Maybe both.
Great question. So for me, it's actually, if you're a coach, it is super easy to get featured in the media, because if you're a huge company, you have stories that journalists are interested in, for like, no doubt. And I know this because I have a corporate background. I worked for Match.com before, and Siemens and Daimler and all these huge companies. So there are stories, but they're completely different from, what you have to offer as a coach. Because what coaches do, most of the coaches became a coach because of a personal experience. So they went through, like it was with me, like I went through this breakup, and I decided I want to help other women to go through this faster. And most of the coaches have that. They have a personal experience, and then they turn that personal experience into a business. Now, this is a very strong story itself, right? Your business story. But then, because you are an individual person and you are, you don't have to be a one-woman show, but you as a coach, you are the face to your company. You have so many things that you can talk about, and you can really mine your life, so to say, for stories that are interesting to your journalist, and then learn how you can, bridge these stories to your business, so that you always are able to talk about your business and to talk about how you help other people. And
cool.
then also get leads for that, right?
What are the biggest challenges that you see coaches have with PR and publicity? Even like in working with you, because obviously they're going to work with you and you're going to take them through the steps. Like, where do they get hung up? I'm wondering.
So the steps are not the challenge. So like, I have a very powerful framework that works. The thing is that most of the coaches struggle with mindset, right? So getting themselves out there in a really big way. If you get featured in Cosmopolitan and you know that a couple of million people potentially can see what you said, or you have a TV segment and you have to be there, and then probably it's also live. So for a lot of coaches, it's really the first time around they need to overcome the boundary or the mindset block to send out the pitch. Because when you send out the pitch, it potentially can be accepted, and that means that you need to get yourself out there, right? So that is most of the time the biggest challenge. So, I mean, they all have amazing stories, and they all, they follow the system and implement what I say, and that's never the problem. It's always like, okay, now I have my pitch ready. Can you read it? And I'm like, okay, cool. That's a great pitch. Now you can send it. Oh, okay. So, but what if I get accepted? I was like, well, that's the goal. That's why we do it, right? It's like, yeah, but then everybody can see me. And it's like, yeah, but that is the goal, right? If everybody needs to see you, that your ideal client can see you as well, right? So, yeah, but that's the most challenging.
How do you help people get past that?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, if you're scared to get yourself out there, you need to reframe your situation. It is not about you, right? Your coaching business isn't about you. Your coaching business is about the people that you help. And you always have two decisions that you can make. So the first is you hold back and you really hide your gift and you don't get yourself out there and you don't help other people, or you get past that and you just do it, because sometimes we just have to do the things, and you allow yourself to, be found and also help the people. And for the coaches that I work with, the drive to help other people is much higher than the fear that they have. So it doesn't mean that they don't have any fears, right? But that's a good reason for them to overcome, right? To overcome that fear. And also, the fear of being judged is something that people have a lot. And then what I always say is, look, people always judge you. It doesn't matter. You can't make everybody happy, and you shouldn't. That's not your job. And you have your ideal client. You are there for your ideal client. And people will look at you and judge you if you do what you want to do. And people also look at you and judge you if you don't do what you want to do. So you better do what you want to do, and then you be judged for that. So, that's just how it works. That's how humans are. We can't, get along with everybody, and we shouldn't, so it's totally fine.
Cool. I like hearing that, and that comes up with my work with people too. It seems somewhere there's a bit of that imposter syndrome that we all have lurking, and the more I see I don't really have to pay attention to it, the less I just okay, whatever, that's normal, it's gonna come up, do it anyway. And you said just do it.
Yeah.
It seems to help.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's also just about recognizing the thought, right? We know it's there. And as you said, everybody suffers from imposter syndrome more or less. And some people suffer from it really badly, and some of them overcame it already, and then it creeps back in, I also have this sometimes, but at the end of the day, we all have a mission, we all have a gift, and especially coaches, we do what we do because we want to help other people to get further in their lives, to improve their life. It doesn't really matter if it's health or their relationship or business or whatever it is, right? So we all have a gift, and we are there to share it with other people, and that's what it's all about. And yes, I mean, I think imposter syndrome is totally normal.
Yeah. So I'm wondering, Simone, what am I not asking you that I should be asking you about this? What question don't I know to ask?
Wow. Oh, wow. That is a great question. Well, I have no idea. Probably you should ask me about the 5 steps that people should take to get into the media.
Okay, that's a good one. What 5 steps should people take to get into the media?
Yeah, so I mean, the foundation is that you have really a rock star offer, right? So you know your ideal client, you know what your expertise is, meaning you know what you want to be known for, and you already sold your coaching. So basically, you have this foundation, right? Now, then the first step, what you want to do is you want to find the media outlet that is right for your coaching business. That's what I said earlier. You have to do the research. And then you have to find the right journalist within that media outlet. So that's the first step, and find the individual email address of that journalist. Don't ever send anything at editorial office at XYZ. So because they are hardly monitored, and often they are monitored by interns, and so it will just get lost. You really have to find the one person who is interested in what you have to share. Then the second step is that you need to grab the media's attention, and you do this by finding a story. That's what I said earlier, either a story, expertise, or a strong opinion. So you need to find something that you can offer to the journalist. Now, the third step is your bulletproof pitch, basically. That means that you write an email to the journalist. You do not send a press release. But you write an individual email, you build up rapport with the journalist, you connect with the journalist, and then you pitch your story. You have to be careful that the email is, short and sweet, because journalists get around 150 to 300 emails per day. So they are not able to read emails, like this long with your life story and everything. Now, if you haven't heard back from that pitch, you should follow up once. If you know that this is like the super duper story for this journalist, you can follow up twice. But if they don't come back to you, then let it go. Pitch another story another time to that journalist. But then it's the wrong time, or he or she is not interested. Now, after that, let's say the journalist says yes, that's awesome. I want to talk to you. Then you need to deliver, and you can deliver 2 things, which either is when you pitched yourself as a contributor, then you deliver a guest post, which means you post on their website and you deliver the content, the piece of content. Or the other thing is you can pitch yourself as a featured expert. Then the journalist will interview you, you will get on the phone, and they will build the story around what you have to say. Now, and then the last step is one of the most important steps, which most of the people forget, which is the promotion, right? You need to really leverage your media coverage, and you need to understand how to do this for, I always say, clients, cash, and reputation. So there are a couple of things quite some things that you can do to, get more money from your publicity, to get more clients from it, to really push your reputation. And that is something that most of the people don't do and also don't know how to do. So that is basically the 5 steps that you have to do. And it's a simple but very powerful framework. There's quite some things that you need to know around these steps. But yeah, in the foundation, that is what you do.
Hmm. So if someone was looking to get started with this,
Mm-hmm.
what would you recommend for them right now? So it sounds like this is really going to be best for someone who already has, like, they're kind of experienced. They can deliver results for clients. They, um, they have an offer that sells. They have the foundation, right? They know who their ideal client is, because without any of that, you can't target the audience, the media outlets where your audience is going to be.
Well, yes and no. I mean, if you don't have a product that's sold, that if you haven't sold anything yet, I try to sell to a couple of people first, so that you know that it works, right?
Mm-hmm.
And why would you do that? Because when you do PR and you get in your leads, then it's going to be easier for you, right? So you can, if you have something that is unstable or not, you're insecure about what you offer, and you get in the leads, then it's difficult for you, because then you have the leads but you don't know what to do with it. It's basically the same like with advertising. You should be ready to get in leads and to sell something that you're convinced about and that you can offer. Even if you haven't sold it before, that's also fine, but you need to know what it is that you deliver. That is how I would define it.
Okay, cool. So for someone who, let me say, someone like that, okay, so they're clear about what they're offering and who it's for. They're clear enough that we can do this strategy. What would you suggest for them as they're starting out? Like, what's the very first thing they could do that would help get them going with a PR and publicity
So
strategy?
the first thing is, I always recommend to get your website ready, right? So have a couple of blog posts on your website, 4 to 8. I always recommend to blog regularly, but if you don't have the time, or if there is anything else why you can't do it, then make sure that you have 4 to 8 blog posts there. And these blog posts should be around your expertise, around what you teach, around what you have to offer, so that if a journalist comes to your website, that they can see your expertise, that they can see whom they are talking with, and you already position yourself as the expert on your website. And then you also should have a media and PR site ready, right? A little bit with your bio, with pictures that a journalist can download, because they are always under time pressure, and they just need to have it really super simple. And if you have this all on your website, it's easy for them, right? And then what I always say is, as a first step, try to pitch yourself as a contributor, and then don't start with Forbes, right? So that's what people, when they come to me and they don't have any media experience, like, yes, I want to be featured in Forbes. I was like, yes, that's cool. So we can achieve this in the upcoming 6 to 12 months. But this is not something that you start out with, because, we have to build up, right? So start, depending on what you do, you can also start locally, like, with a local newspaper, or, with smaller blogs, try to cooperate with other coaches, and try to really get yourself out there on like smaller websites, and then build your way up, right? And I'm not saying you have to write 10 guest posts on small websites, like, no way, but just really start out with the smaller ones, and then work your way up. And also, don't really jump onto magazines right away, because there it's the same thing. If you're pitching Cosmopolitan or InStyle, or whomever, they have a lot of people who pitch them. So you have to have a little bit of a basis, a little bit of a foundation, that you can also show to a journalist, hey, I'm actually experienced and I'm not a newbie. So yeah, basically that's how it works.
Well, thank you. That's very helpful, Simone. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with people that you think would be helpful on this journey?
Well, what I said is, the mindset is really crucial. And one of the things that's probably also a big one. One of the obstacles that I see coaches that they have to overcome before they get started with their PR is not thinking they have to be an expert, right? So they have to be an expert in their field. They need to understand what they are doing. But many people tell me, yeah, but I have to be an expert to get featured. I have to have a huge social media following or whatnot. And that is not true. Basically, you become an expert. You are perceived as an expert through your publicity. You don't have to be one. Like, journalists have to create up to 10 stories per day. Now, if you have ever written a blog post or created a podcast, you know how much time it costs to create one piece of content. Now, journalists have to create up to 10 of those, depending on where they work. And if you imagine that you have this pressure every day, then you also understand how a journalist thinks, right? So everything has to be fast, everything has to be easy. And if now you come around with an amazing, story presented on a silver plate to the journalist, they will gratefully take it because that's one story less that they have to take care of that day, right? And if you know how to do this and how to get there, then you can do this over and over and over again. And because you build a relationship with PR, or through PR, you build a relationship with the journalist, I have to say, they will recognize you as a reliable source. And then when they need someone, because they are short of content or whatever, they will also reach out to you and say like, hey, Stephanie, do you have, I create a piece of content around this topic. Can you share with me something about that, right? Because then they know you as this expert in your field, right? So for me, this happened a lot with my heartache business. People knew that this is my expertise, and they reached out to me because they needed to talk to someone about divorce, about heartache, about, being dumped and all these kind of things. So yeah, that's basically how it works.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Simone. So what is the best place to reach out to you if someone wants to learn more about how you help with this?
Yes, so there are two things. So first is my website, which is simonesauter.com, and I am daily on LinkedIn. So if you want to connect with me, then connect with me on LinkedIn. Send me a message there, reach out to me. So that's my social media platform, talking about social media. So as I said in the beginning, I recommend people to have one social media channel. LinkedIn is mine. And that's the place where you can connect with me the easiest. I mean, if you want to talk to me, you can also book a call with me, but that's something you can find on my website as well.
Cool. Thank you so much, Simone. This has been great.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.